Salve, people of the universe. My name is Lord Salvatore, and I decided to do a quick little video explaining the situation in Israel and why it's very pertinent that we support Israel in their ideas. Well, I understand people are hesitant when children are suffering, regardless of what religion or culture the children have, because children can switch religion cultures anyway, right? Children are by nature the more innocent group that ever gets caught up in war. It's always they who die and who suffer the most. To understand how we got to this point, people say there's different dates, but I'm not going to name any dates, any years. I'm just going to describe the events because I feel like a lot of people get lost in the idea of time and things like that. But what we really need to look at is the data, and the data says this. The data says that once upon a time, there were people there who came from India. Those were the first settlers in Phoenicia, which is modern-day Israel, Lebanon, and such. Now, Phoenicia is also very popular because it was once claimed by Alexander the Great, who expanded eastwards from North Macedonia, or South Macedonia, which is part of Macedonia, which is now part of Greece. So, in that same regard, the Phoenicians settled in Tunisia, which used to be Carthage, and they fought the Romans. So when you look at it this way, it shows that already since the beginning there was a strange sort of connection between the western part and the eastern part going to war with each other. So why is that the case? Well, first of all, you have the big religious differences. You've got, if you talk about Christianity, you've got Eastern Orthodoxy and you've got the Western Catholics. And if you have the more Islamic idea of the Eastern countries, especially in the Southeast, they tend to be more for the jihad, the idea that the Islamic faith speaks of, which is that the Islamic faith should spread everywhere around the earth and conquer anyone who disagrees with them. Now, there are several reasons why the Islamic faith is dangerous and wrong, according to our standards in the Western civilization, because they don't respect women in the same sense. And we've seen this in Iran, where women who don't wear a hijab, they get executed. They get publicly humiliated and executed. And this goes to show you one of the main traits that really doesn't work. And we've seen this with the immigrant crisis in Europe as well. This is why we must expel the true Muslims, I call them, which are different than the neo-Muslims. And the neo-Muslims are the ones that follow the Islamic faith, but do it so without believing in the jihad, basically. So we need to expel the true Muslims, and we need to understand why the true Muslims are a danger. And it all comes back down to what I said: the Quran, their book, their holy book, the book that they follow as the guide to life. It talks about conquest of anyone who disagrees. It talks about this mistreatment of women. They're talking about how the Prophet married a 6-year-old. And people say often, oh, no, that's contested, but it's not really. Everything that they say is up for interpretation is actually not up for interpretation. It's just the way it's written down. Now, whether that's something a God would truly say or not, that's a whole nother story, right? Because who knows who wrote what down in the Bible or a Quran. Like, regardless of what you believe, you have to admit that humans must be able to corrupt the ideas of any God whatsoever. So, because once we have an interpretation of an idea by a God, we then claim that idea. We could never have the truly godly idea because it has the context of a bigger plan, which we could never understand in the theological sense, at least. So, yes, religion is part of this war, But that's not the only thing. It's also a war of culture, a war of economy, and a war of land. This is the thing. The Jews want to expand, right? They want to expand, so they're trying to take over what they claim is their holy land. And people think that they're going to be more aggressive and keep going, what if they invade Lebanon? What if they invade Jordan? But that's not going to happen. And we've seen this because they've also given back the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt in a war before. This shows that they do want to expand, but not aggressively. They just want to get the land that they believe belongs to them biblically. So you've got these two opposing religions, and then you've got, like I said, the economic war between the BRICS is one idea and the United States dollar. But it gets a lot more confusing because even though that's an economic battle, there's also the economic ideology battle of capitalism versus communism. And this is the crux of the problem. This is why so many people misinterpret the situation. A lot of people don't understand what's going on because there's so many different factors that look like each other but are actually separate. But they do intertwine and they do interconnect. And that's something that's really hard to keep up with because there's so many factors. So I hope that clarified at least that part. But now let's get to the consequence of this. Well, if we are going to talk about numbers, I don't want to talk about time. I want to talk about how many people die. And there's currently 2 million people, about 2 million people in Gaza. And if you really calculate how many people have died in the Israeli-Gaza conflict, then you can see that actually more people are going to be dying if Gaza remains there. So Gaza needs to be taken. That's like the only solution. There's no two-state solution because you've got these two very extremist ideologies. We've already supplanted that. We've already explained that. There can never be peace between these two very extreme chemicals, according to the Age of Escalation ideology thesis, and also the very famous Rawls thesis on the conflict of nations and the conflict of ideology. So the only way that this is going to end is if Gaza no longer remains. So what are the options here? Well, with Gemtocracy, I had the idea to focus heavily on innovation and science and create new land. I think if we were to make new land, we could create land for them to live on, create new ecosystems. We can be the terraformers of the earth, right? That's the idea. We've done amazing things. Here in the Netherlands, for example, we built the Delta Works. We were the masters of the sea. So where has all that innovation gone now? Well, we've gotten lazy in the West, and that's the truth. We've taken our freedom and illusion of safety for granted. And I think that that's something we need to relinquish, and we need to realize that we need to fight for the future still. There's still things to be done. It's not over. It's not a time for peace. Peace is not working in this climate, in this world. So what we need to do is we need to, and I'm not talking about in a war sense necessarily, I'm just talking about peace in general, like the comfort, the escapism. That's not working. But yeah, in regards to what should happen to them, I think that would be a good solution. Give them a new land to live in. But if there are people who disagree with that and they remain there and large groups remain in Gaza, then the only solution is to execute them all. And I know that sounds extreme. I know that it may seem rude because, there's children there. But like I said, when you look at the numbers of people who are dying on either side of the conflict, I'm definitely more pro-Israel. But if you look at the conflict on either side, there's more people that are dying than if we were to just kill 2 million people right now. And I think, again, the question is also, why are other countries around not opening up their borders? Well, because they're trying to also defend their faith. A lot of countries surrounding Israel are also Islamic countries. And I don't believe that we as the West should go to war with Islamic countries. I think that's not something we should be wishing for. I think the first thing we need to do is to separate from each other and have diplomatic relations with the Islamic countries, but keep it very shallow, almost an isolationist policy against them. And I think that making it economic rather than cultural mixing is the way to go. And I think that would be beneficial for both empires, so to speak, the European Empire and the Islamic Empire. So, in that sense, the Israel-Palestine conflict is, of course, tragic. No one wants children to die. But if you look at logic, if you look at the numbers, the only solution is this. It's deposition, separation, and if it really comes down to it, and if we really have no other choice, execution. And yes, I know that can be seen as genocide, but you have to understand, it's not genocide, because it's not about your genetic makeup. It's not about even what you... It's about, the question really is, in my ideas at least, the question is, are you willing to leave this terrain for your life, right? I think that this could be mutually beneficial to everyone, the solution. So I've described to you the problem and my possible solution, but now let's talk about what's actually going to happen, most likely, because I'm not the one in charge currently. I wish I was, but the truth is that currently the situation is pretty bleak. I think that even if peace came back, it would be very temporary, and we can see that other countries are all eyeing up a storm. You've got Venezuela, you've got Argentina, you've got Brazil, China, you've got Canada, you've got Taiwan, you've got North Korea. You've got all these countries that form a big risk, and not to mention already the war that's going on with Russia and Ukraine. The age of escalation is here, and we cannot avoid it. So, in that same regard, I do think that we need to prepare mentally, which a lot of people in the West aren't, for a period of unprecedented warring, unprecedented tragedy, unprecedented atrocities. And I think we need to really get into the mindset of war now. Because if we do it too late, then it's going to show up at our front door, and we're going to be the ones paying the price for it. Thank you for watching, and all hail to the rebel.